Like some of the rest of you, I'm an immigrant in West Virginia and spent many, many years outside of the United States working for the Department of Defense Dependent Schools. We taught the kids of the GIs. And that's where I met Ernie in 1980. So we've been friends for quite a long time. And he and his wife have some really interesting stories, but he's here visiting by himself right now. They live in Alexandria, Virginia. And he's been retired since 2001 or two. Two. And for me, it was 2004. We both ended up in northern Italy. Wow. Really tough place to live. Just outside of Venice for me, and he was in Verona, downtown. At any rate, he has a fascinating story, life story altogether, and he'll share some of that. But his family itself went through the Holocaust in a variety of different ways, some of them lucky, some not so lucky. And he's going to share some of that with you. I don't think he'll be telling you anything you have to leave the room for.
Anything what?
That you have to leave the room for. By the way, if you have any
No, nothing
questions,
gory. It won't be anything gory.
So speak up.
Yeah.
And you're free to interrupt him.
Yes.
He's
yes.
willing to do that, and he said he'd rather have the lights on, but I think you can all see the screen well enough.
Yeah.
I will be the master of ceremonies for moving the screen around, but aside from that, the show is now yours, my dear.
Okay, thanks, Mel. And welcome, and thank you so much. Wow, what a good group. Yeah, it's going to be a conversation. So you want to ask something, just ask, and we'll fit you in. We have 2 hours to play with, so we won't run short of time. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. George Santayana said, "Those who do not know history are condemned to repeat it." And that's the reason I'm here. Because what happened to my family, I was too young to realize what was happening to me, is something that we need to reinforce constantly, because we live right now in a period that has many similarities to what I grew up in and what my parents endured and so on. Anyway, my cousin said to me, that line you have is a good opener for a novel. When I was born, all three of us, my mother, my father, and I, were all in prison. I was born in a Nazi prison in Frankfurt. My mother and father, unmarried, living together, were arrested by the Gestapo in September of 1933. And she was placed in a women's prison in Frankfurt. My father went to another prison further out of Frankfurt, and later was reassigned to Dachau. And Dachau was the first concentration camp in Germany and in the German Reich. He survived that, and that is a mystery to me, and that's something that my daughter and I will be looking into in the next months, about how did he manage 12 years. He went in 33, he came out in 45. How did he manage to spend all that time and live from that? That's part of it. Let's see. I've done this before with children, with students of, usually they were classmates of my grandchildren. This is the first time I'm doing to a group of adults, so it's going to be slightly different for the first time. This is my family. My grandmother, Sarah, my grandfather, Max, and this is my mother, Martha. This is the older brother, Arthur.
How about this? Is that helpful?
No, it's not. Leave the other one on.
Okay.
This is Siegfried. This is Jules. And I'll go through. I think it would be more useful to find out about the Holocaust from that point of view. let's see, my mother was arrested, and before that, she must have had a discussion with my father. Said, you know, this is pretty dangerous stuff, what I'm doing. How do I protect myself? Everybody's against us. And so they must have come up with the idea that you sign nothing, you belong to nothing, and you take no pictures. And I'll show you later on what happened as a result of that. The others, let's see, start then with Arthur at the end. Arthur started out in Germany. He had a business, and they said, Arthur, you know, we like you. It's wonderful here, but the Jews, it's not very safe for you. You should leave. So he went to Italy. He had been to Italy many times before. He loved Italy. And so he started a new business in Italy. So that's his second time. He was there for a while, a couple of years, and yes.
When exactly did Hitler become chancellor?
Sorry?
What month in 1933 did Hitler become chancellor? I'm just trying to date.
Oh, it was my parents were arrested in September of 33.
And when did he become chancellor? Was he
35. 35.
What's it?
I know 30, he was 33, 34.
Okay, so
Yeah.
okay.
But the major law that established the whole racial situation was 35. Okay.
So that was before.
All right. So he then went to he left Italy, came to the United States, and started another business. And he excelled there, also became a multimillionaire. He's since passed away. Let's see. Let's go back to the other. I'm comfortable with the other picture.
Okay.
Oh, my grandparents, when we found out that my mother found out, I was a sort of a non-entity. My mother found out that we got to get out of here. This is not safe. We had relatives outside of New York City who had visited them in the 20s and said, look, if you have a problem, let us know. We can help you out. And they seem to have been very well connected politically. They had contacted State Department, and I think they had some contacts in Congress, and they issued a visa for us. So that got us out. Visa got us out later on. Then this is Siegfried. This is the second youngest. He in 32, he got into a fight with a boy who called him a dirty Jew and beat him up. And it found out later on he beat up the son of a high-ranking Nazi official. That didn't bode very well, so the police took him for protection. And for protection, they beat the crap out of him. He returned home about a day later. His jacket was so soaked with blood that solidified that it would stand up on its own. That's how bad it was. And they said, you better leave here or you're going to die. He immediately left for Palestine. See, he's part of our family that went into Palestine. So, you know, typical of the Jewish family, they are all over the place. The wandering Jew, that was basically it. And I have a very, very active family, very large family in Israel, who I visited a year ago. Cute story. By marriage, one of the members of that family is Ephraim Halevi. I don't know how much you know about Israel and what goes on there about the Mossad. Have you heard about, you know what the Mossad is? Ephraim Halevi was the head of the Mossad for 4 years. But he also grew up in England. And in the English, you know, very friendly. If you shake hands, that's good, but nothing more than that. And I was greeting the various family members when I arrived. There were about 20 there, hugging everybody, hugging everybody. Ephraim comes in, I give him a big hug. I feel his uncomfort, you know, it's just sort of waiting. And I was like, oh, I forgot he's English. He doesn't like. Next to me is my cousin laughing her head off. I said, Karen, what's going on? She says, it's the first time I've seen Ephraim get the first hug in his whole life. So that was that. Anyway,
Jules.
yes, then we get to Jules. Jules was the youngest. That's Jules over here. He's the youngest, and he wanted to go to university. At the time he wanted to go to university, Jews weren't allowed anymore to go to the university. So he went to France. He started studying in the Sorbonne. And while there, the war was beginning, and he became very much a Francophile, and he joined the reserves. He was in the resistance. What's that? The resistance, yeah, the resistance. And he also had a scientific background. And again, he was told shortly after the war began, Jules, you should really get out of France. This is not safe for you. So he went off to England. And in England, he got involved with the radars. The radar was just beginning then, and he had a background in this area, so he's worked there for a while. Jules worked in England for a while, and then he was on his way back to the United States, for the first time he was coming to the United States. We were living, family was living together in Philadelphia at the time, and we were visited by the FBI. What we knew with the FBI was, why are we being visited by the FBI? What did we do wrong? No, you didn't do anything wrong. Everything's okay. I said, well, what do you mean it's okay? We came here to tell my grandmother, that your son Jules is on this ship, and we'd like him to get in touch with us. I said, well, what did he do wrong? No, he didn't do anything wrong. He's a scientist, and we were keeping track of the scientists to see if they could help us with the war effort. I said, okay, fine. So he came back. He was then told to report to a research facility, super secret research facility in upstate New York. He went there, and they said, you're not even an American. We can't let you on this post. He said, well, I have a letter to say to come here. They called up the base. It wasn't a base commander. It was the commander of the whole operation. It was a general. General had to come to the main gate to escort him on the base. So they said, we'll take care of this. He became a citizen within a few days. So that took care of that. And he got the clearance and so on. And he then continued in his scientific work to the point where he was one of the managers of the Tyros weather satellite, quote, weather satellite. And we said, come on, Jules, it's not a weather. He says, yes, it is. It's a weather satellite. He was very proud and very patriotic. And so that was what happened with him. What happened with me is my mother, typically of an immigrant, you start as a domestic. So she found work at helping clean and maintain a home and so on in different places.
You want to go back to the beginning for your mother and you now?
What about that?
Track the story of your life now?
Okay, yeah, let's do that. Thank you. She's gonna keep me online. What happened with us was at that point, then we had to get out. So we got a visa, but in order to leave the country, you have to have police clearance. And police clearance, you have no record, or there's nothing. Fortunately, what happened was she was tried. She went to the highest German civilian court at the time, the Volksgericht, in Berlin. And they said to her, we know you're involved in things, but we have absolutely no record. We have no record at all. But we know you're involved because you're living with a man who's a communist, a elected official, and so on. But we have no record. So what we're going to do is we're going to say that for whatever you did that we don't know about, the time you spent in prison is good time, and you're now allowed to be free. You're acquitted, And we will put a stay on any action that the Gestapo has planned to do, because the Gestapo was waiting in the audience to take her all back to prison. And so she was released. And that's what I was saying before about no signatures, no membership, no pictures. That she never told me this, but what she did tell me was, you know, when I was in prison, they kept talking about a woman that's very important, very, very important. And they don't know who she, they don't have a picture, they don't, she looks like nothing at all, no name, nothing, but they know there's a woman involved. I said, yeah, really? So that was me.
Oh, wow.
So that's
Okay.
chutzpah. Okay, now what? Okay. Oh, yeah, he went to, yeah, I talked about my father going to Dachau. And then, yeah, that's one of the things that's a work in progress. Let's see, my daughter is now sending her daughter to college, and that's in August. And after that, we decided we go to the Holocaust Museum and see what we can find out about my father. By the way, I had no relationship with my father. There was no social relationship. And that's part of what happens when you have a war. It interrupts your life. And so let's see. So what happened then?
She was sent, she didn't even know
huh?
she was your mom. This is about your mom.
Yeah. And she was released from prison.
This is before that.
Oh, that was when she was pregnant. Oh yeah, well she was all right, yeah. So she was pregnant. She says, "You listen, I'm pregnant. You got to release me." I said, "No, we're not releasing you." So they said, "You're just going to stay here." Fortunately, there was a woman in charge of the prison, and she had her moved to the same floor as the office, and she also had a midwife assigned to her. I was given birth there, and you know, I had nothing to do with any of this. So this child, what do we do? Well, there is a record of me. Every day, my temperature was taken twice, my weight was taken twice, and my height was taken. And it's a handwritten in pencil document, which I still have, for the 6 months that I was in prison. My first 6 months of gestation, I was in prison, and my first 6 months of life, I was in prison. And they told her, listen, your son has to be out in the garden at least 1 hour every day to get fresh air. Now, this is a Gestapo prison. And, you know, all during the time when they were separate here in the United States, when they were separating, you know, the southern border, tearing children apart from the family, I was that close to writing a letter saying, you know, let me tell you about my life in a Gestapo prison and how shameful you are that you're doing, you know, what you're doing now. And if, you know, it's what happens. Good ideas sometimes go unfulfilled. So that was it. That was what was going through my mind. Anyway, she worked as a domestic, and in one particular job she had, the woman was a lower level royalty from Eastern Europe country, and she gave her a bunch of assignments, and she's writing it down. And she says, "What are you writing down?" She says, "I'm writing down what you're telling me because I can't remember all this." She says, "Well, let me see. What is that you're writing?" She says, "It's shorthand." And I said, "Shorthand? That's not shorthand. I know shorthand. I teach shorthand." This is German shorthand. So that was it. She's also, I was telling Melody the other day, she could also add four-figure columns in her head. Eventually she met other people she knew in friends in Germany. They opened up a business that was very successful, and that brought us into the middle class, and that's how we managed with that. Let's see, that's me. I was good looking, wasn't it? That's me in Germany. And yeah, one of the stories about that was my mother was My mother was wheeling me in a little carriage, blonde hair, perfectly a good
Arian.
Aryan, yeah. And a woman came up and said, "Sag Heil Hitler, say Heil Hitler." And my mother said, sagt es nicht. He doesn't say things like that. It's the right thing to get into jail again. Anyway, so off we went, and we we were on the ship, the Franconia. Huh?
You've got an experience as a child that precedes the Franconia.
Yeah, we got on the Franconia, for shipboard,
We'll get back to that part.
and it's the same ship and the same voyage as Enrico Fermi, the physicist who just received the Nobel Prize in Norway. And he was told, he was married to a Jewish woman, he was told, don't go back to Italy. And they were dismantling the whole scientific establishment. This is, we're not getting funds anymore. You're better off with your friends in the United States and so on. So he was on the same ship. Of course, I was 4 years old. What do I know from Enrico Fermi? But that was interesting. And studying, my background's in science, and studying about it, I said, oh my God, we have something in common. Let's see. Yeah, the visa. Oh yeah, then we got a passport, and that we're going to see that later on. Those of you who have any background with Judaism knows there's an aspect of Judaism that has to do with numerology. Certain numbers have certain significance. The 7 is a very, very high significance, good fortune and so on. Our passport number leaving Germany was 7777. You'll see it up here. 4 7s /38 in the year of 38. So it's just an indication of somebody around or something, some of the universe is sort of keeping an eye out. So off we went. Kristallnacht. Do you know what Kristallnacht is? Have you heard it? Right. Crystal is German for glass. And that's when they destroyed many, many places, killed a lot of people. Most of the places that were owned by the Jews were destroyed or burned. The village we lived in, Rheinheim, near Frankfurt, the city elders contacted the Jewish elders and said, look, there's some bad things that are going to happen, and we know, we want you to know that we want to help you. And how can we help? Your Torah and your religious relics and things that you have, give them to us. We will safeguard them. We'll hide them in a place that nobody can get them. So that was an interesting sidelight that wasn't all bad. There were people there that were helping out. And the synagogue was located right in the center of the town, attached to other buildings. So if they burned the synagogue, they burned the whole town down. So they said, you can't burn this synagogue. You can damage it if you want, you can't burn it. So the synagogue still exists today in this small town. Anyway, and so this is some pictures of Kristallnacht. And this is a November 11th, 1938, part of the New York Times. And what happened was it went totally out of control. And so Goebbels had to get up and say, okay, enough is enough, let's stop it. And if you see any pictures from that period, which I have, you can see smoke rising. I saw a horizontal picture of a landscape. You see smoke rising in various parts. Those are synagogues that are burning at about the 9th and 10th of November, 1938. Not a good period. All right. This is the doorway to the yard of my grandfather had a small dealership in cattle, and that was into the yard, the animal yard behind that. That's part of the house that we grew up in. I grew up in. in Rheinheim. We found out something very interesting. I was married in '63 in Wiesbaden. And to a woman who grew up in the Philippines, Spanish in the Philippines. And if the time exists, Mel and I says, we have to have we may need some fillers. So we have a filler. You can go into my wife's story also, which is a lot more harrowing than mine was. But anyway, so I got off the subject again.
Leaving Germany from Kristallnacht.
Right,
the
all right.
train.
So at that point, we knew we had to leave. We had to leave. What happened though was the permission we had from the police had a mistake in it. It was the dates were incorrect. And if you get this once, and if you don't use it, that's it. You're stuck. You can't. You get another one. So she had to go to the Gestapo headquarters in Wiesbaden and confront a Gestapo officer. So here is a 27-year-old single German female,
Jew.
single mother, confronting the worst, the most severe bureaucracy. Well, this guy was so intimidated by my mother. He says, okay, we made a mistake. Okay, let me see what it is. I'll fix it. So he fixed it. But in fixing it, he made another mistake, which widened the period of time that we could leave. So I had no problem getting out. Otherwise, so we're on a train on the 21st of December, 38 to France. And then in France, in Paris, we met Uncle Jules. And he took us down to Cherbourg, and we got on the Franconia, and then to the States. I was married in '63, and my mother came over, and she says, "Why don't we go to the old house? Because it's only half hour by car from where we're living at the time." We went there, and we found that our next door neighbors occupied our. That good. I hope mine doesn't do it. I told my home not to call me now. They were shocked. They thought they were seeing a ghost, but it was interesting that that's what happened to our property, that the next door neighbor received it. And they received reparations. But nevertheless, you say, wait a second, these people, our family lived in that town for well over 200 years. There's a graveyard there that goes back over 200 years. So it was a question that they didn't know us. They knew, and they lived together. But that's how things happen. Let's see, where are we now? Oh, Franconia. Oh, there's I have to thank Mel. She could get things out of the ether. This is Enrico Fermi, and he was on. And then Ellis Island, we're there for 2 days, and we went back about 10 years ago to 10 years. Oh, here it is. Here's the passport. Rise pass. Okay, now here's what I want you to look at. First of all, the J. Any passport carried by a Jew had a J on it. So they knew immediately that this was a Jew. And here's the number: 77778. That's my mother, Martha. And that's it. Now, a friend of mine in the condo, I was the president of the condo board in Alexandria. And he says, you have this German background, you should be getting German citizenship. And I said, yeah, I probably should as well. I'm going to check on it myself. He wasn't Jewish. So he went and he said, I found out that you can become a German in about 2 or 3 weeks. Just have to have some documents. Well, we have tons of documents. So we went down with this passport. And I was kidding with a counselor officer, Inga Wagner. I said, Ms. Wagner, I'd like to have this renewed. She says, you want this renewed with all the swastikas on it? And I said, well, no, you can't get a passport. You have to get your citizenship first. So I said, okay, and how about that? She says 2-3 weeks with all the documents you have, you get your citizenship. I said, whoa, that's fast. She says, yeah, there's a special law just for you. You fit this law absolutely perfectly, and you have all the documents, no problem. However, there are other questions and other decisions you have to make, such as, well, when you become a German citizen, your children become German, if they want to become German citizens. Okay, I'll have to ask them. We have adult children, they're at that point, they're in their 30s, no, 40s. Then when they become German, their children become German also. So they'll make the mind up for the children. And not only that, that citizenship is hereditary. All your offspring from then on, forever and ever, as they say in the Catholic Church, are also Germans. So 500 years from now, one of my offspring will get a passport and say, how come I got a German passport? Well, your old grandpa, Ernie, got that for you. So that's amazing. So there are 6 of us. We went to the embassy. 6 of us became German citizens the same day.
Retained American citizenship.
Oh yeah, we retain American, right? Well, we have some Mexicans in the family. They have their citizenship also. Our 2 children were born in Italy. They have their citizenship also. We're loaded with citizenships. And we met a friend of ours, an old friend of ours, that my mother knew in Germany, and she was in a retirement home. She was 103 at the time, and we're talking to my grandchildren. The youngest was, I think, 3 or 4 at the time, about the fact she's got a German passport and she's got an American passport. She has a Mexican passport, and she says, "You know, that's very good. You have so many places to hide." So,
If you want to look back for a minute, you had a recollection as a child yourself coming to America.
yeah. When I was, we arrived, I was 4 years old, about almost 5, and I was in upper Manhattan in the 160s, the northern part of just the beginning of the northern part of Harlem, and we walked by a building which looked like it had been burned out, and I said to my grand uncle Fritz, who had been a Marine in the German Navy in World War I. I said, it looks to me in German, it looks to me like there's some bad boys around here also that are burning things down like they did in Germany. And in retelling that, he burst into tears. And he was a butcher, he was a tough butcher.
I went too far, my dear, sorry.
Huh?
Let me get back to where you were. I think I'm going in the wrong direction. Oh, no. All right, let's see. Back.
Yeah, you had me at
There we are. Apologies.
that's okay.
I'm not technical.
Oh, that was that story, yeah. Okay, then and this will switch to my background. What happened then was we lived all over the East Coast. I was in Vineland, New Jersey at the time. There was a lot of Jewish families would move to New Jersey and start farming and so on. Ours was one of them. And I went to school there. We applied for citizenship. And nice suit, tie, nice picture, and off I went to the courthouse in Cumberland County, Bridgeton. And when I came in there in the gallery, I always get torn up by this. In the gallery was my class, watching me get my citizenship. Very touching. And then this is going back to, we had a family center in Vineland, and we would travel back from New York to Vineland periodically. Then I moved to New York. My mother had the income to have a big enough apartment for the two of us to stay in New York. And she was also a weaver of note, and also a silversmith of note, as well as doing work in her regular work in the office she worked in. I credit her with making me socially aware. I'd see people walking with picket signs. It was in my early teens, and she'd explain to me what that was all about in a positive way. So that instilled the social aspect. Well, most Jews have a very serious social aspect also, but that was even heightened by that. Then let's see, growing up, I was ignoring all my mail from the draft board, especially during Korea. I said, I'm allergic to hot lead, so I'm messing around. Well, I finally started opening. I opened one and says, "You are hereby directed to report the 39 Whitehall for an induction physical." I said, "Oh shit, that's not too good. That's not too good. That's not too good." So I went down, and they said to me, "You're sitting naked in this room, about 4 times the size, also twice as high, and on all the walls are painted all kinds of diseases." And they say, "Just like to look around and say, see if you had any of these." So we check you out. So I'm looking, and I say, "Look," I start laughing, and they said, "What are you laughing about?" I said, "I've had them all." "I don't, you had them all?" I said, "Everyone." I can't tell you some, but I had them all. I said, "Okay, you're going to Governor's Island." "Oh, I'm going to get out of this." No, you're still healthy enough. You're going in. So at that point, I said, "Okay, I don't still, there's other chances. Let me see back National Guard or the Army Reserve." Army Reserve was all filled, especially the white outfits were all reserved. So having been very comfortable with multiracial backgrounds, I started going into Harlem for the reserves, and I got the armory on 139th Street. And I spoke to them on the phone. He said, "Why don't you come down and let's take a look at you?" And I said, I knew what they wanted. They wanted to see if I was white or not. So I went down, and they said, "Oh, okay, good. We've been accused of racism in reverse." And I started laughing. He says, "How many?" I says, "I know, I work here in Harlem. I was the lifeguard and community center stuff I did. So I'm very well aware of that." He says, "We'd love to have you on, and you can work your way up, become an enlisted man, and then work your way up." I said, "Fine." So I was inducted to the Fighting 369th. Now, I did not know how prestigious this outfit was, because it had won all kinds of meritorious awards for World War I activity. But only about 2 years ago, I was reading an article about a Fighting 369th, the Harlem Hellfighters. And I said, "Holy shit. I didn't realize that that in the First World War, they distinguished themselves. They had told nobody about that." And I was working in the headquarters and in the office, and something you don't even know. They had me in the message center. Okay, so the message center had paper that was used by, this is in the 50s, had paper that was used by carrier pigeons. And I said to them, "Why is this? What is this paper that's so fine? It's for carrier pigeons." I said, "When's the last time you saw a carrier pigeon around here?" Don't ask too many questions. Okay, okay. So I bring a book to read, a magazine, and they say, we don't want you reading books and magazines. You're on duty here. It's okay. I go a little nuts if I don't have something to do. So you want to read something, get some manuals, read some manuals. So I started reading the protocol manual. And I noticed that so-and-so didn't have the stripes on right, and so-and-so wasn't saluting correctly, and so-and-so. And I said, you're a big pain in the ass. They moved me out somewhere. It had nothing to do with it. Then I found out if I went overseas, that was it. So I had about a 3-year exposure to the military. One of the things that happened to me on night duty, I was in Fort Dix for the 6 weeks. Yeah, I think it's 6 weeks. And night duty, and I saw Sputnik. I said, holy shit, man, there it goes. Whoa. Actually, it was going that way. Anyway, so that was anyway, so that was that. Then I went overseas. And after that, we went to Libya, and I said, Libya, you want me to go to Libya? And they said, yeah. I said, it's an Arab country. He said, yeah, we know that. I said, I'm Jewish. I said, Libya doesn't matter. Saudi Arabia, different story, but Libya doesn't matter. Anybody can go to Libya. So off I went to Libya. And that started an adventure that was fabulous, because we had schools. This is in 1960. We had schools, you name it, there was a school in that country. It was everywhere. In Africa, Morocco, Ethiopia, Libya, in Asia, Pakistan, Japan, China, Okinawa, all over Europe, all the countries of Europe. And what was nice was that after a year or two, you could put in for transfer. And so you could travel. So what did I do? Well, shortly after I got there, a friend of mine, other New Yorker, and I said, these guys don't know how to run a school system. This is a mess. Nepotism and favoritism and just awful. He says, we have to start a union. So I said, okay. So I helped start the first real teachers union overseas. And then I got involved. That's one of the ways I met Mel. I got involved early on, and I continued as a full-time employee. In fact, we established a precedent in the federal government of releasing somebody from what their real duty is to work for a union and represent the employees during that time period. We did that. We negotiated contracts. Contract we have is still the last one we negotiated when Mel was involved too. Let me tell you about her.
Not now.
Okay, I won't. If we have time, I'll tell you.
This,
Oh,
just change the subject.
all right. This is one of the many fabulous experiences we've had. I was getting a master's degree at Colby College in Maine, and we were visited by a number of scientists from Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. I don't know if you know or heard about it. Anyway, and they told us about things they were working on and so on. And they were living in the same dorm as we were, and we're sitting around getting together, and they asked where we're from, where we were teaching, and I said, well, I'm teaching in Crete. I said, Greece, Crete? Yes. We have an expedition going there. I said, you do? Really? What are you doing? And they said, they're looking for lost Atlantis. They think Atlantis is located on the Isle of Santorini. It is, by the way. And so I said, well, do they think they need any help? And he says, I don't know, but I'll give you the name of the leader and give him a call and see. I know I speak some Greek and I'm good in scuba diving and stuff like that. Called up James Maver, and he says, yeah, go on down. Here's a date and time and stuff, get down there. And I said, we can't pay you. I said, we're 120 miles away, so I just have to find out how to get over there. But because there's no bus service, there's no train service, no air service. So I get back to Crete, and how am I gonna get to Santorini? So somebody says, go down to the harbor master. He knows all the ships going on everywhere in this area, and there's probably one that goes to Santorini. Just check with him. So I went down, drove down. Now I'm driving the only Volkswagen convertible on the island. Okay. And I pull up, I park, and unannounced go in to see the harbor master, and we chatted a little. And I said, I have an opportunity to go to Santorini to participate in an expedition. I'm looking for transportation. Do you think there's anything? He says, yeah, occasionally we have some ships. I said, okay, well, what's the chance? He says, well, we'll see what's happening. He says, by the way, you have a car. Is that your car down there? He says, it's my car. He says, what if you do go to Santorini, what will you do with your car? The New York Jew. I said, it's yours. Mine? I said, wait, well, I'm away the whole time, but come back at 6 o'clock. I was on a little tramp steamer. What's the stone that floats in water?
Pumice.
Pumice. That picks up pumice. Pumice is a result of a volcanic eruption, also, by the way. And that was going over that night. And I was on the ship, and I had the captain's cabin, only one cabin. I had the captain, and he was cooking a meal for me. I said, I already ate. He says, the harbor master said, I should take care of you. When you come back, if you don't tell him I took care of you, I don't get a berth when I get in that harbor. So I'm taking good care of you, whether you like it or not, you're getting well taken care of. So that's it. I got the Santorini, and we participated in this. James Maver wrote the book. I'll mention in the book. And it was absolutely exciting. Some world-class scientists, not me, world-class scientists were on that. And we think we found Santorini. It was written up in a Time magazine and a few other magazines. And the book's very interesting. Actually, how are we doing on time?
Lots.
Okay. Actually, what happened was Santorini had this enormous explosion. They consider it probably the biggest volcanic eruption in the history of that time of the world. What happens with a aquatic or oceanic volcanic eruption is you get a tsunami. You know what a tsunami is? First, the water goes away, and then it comes back. Okay, well, when this explosion took place, the chronology is very accurate of the Jewish calendar and the Egyptian calendar. And they found out that when the Jews were leaving Egypt on the Exodus, could very well have been at the time this explosion took place. So how does that work out? Well, the tsunami pulls the water away. They didn't cross the Red Sea, they crossed the Sea of Reeds. And the Sea of Reeds is along the coast, the African coast, the Egyptian coast. And what it does, it exposes a land bridge. Okay? That time, the Jews crossed the land bridge. Then what happens with the tsunami, the waters come back. And at the same time, the Pharaoh said, I want my slaves, go get my slaves. And his army is inundated with the water that comes back. And that is some meteorological, geological confirmation to the Passover Exodus. Okay? Blew my mind. Blows your mind? Blew my mind. Anyway, so that's one of the fabulous experiences I had with being overseas. Let's see. What else?
Family?
What about the family?
You had one.
Okay. Well, yeah, I met my wife, Montserrat, which means Mount Serrated. And it's a name you give all firstborn female women in Catalonia, in Spain, outside of Barcelona. She was one of 5 in the family, so it's months a year, months a year. And so we met there, and we were married in Germany, which was that was quite a situation. She was Cuban, and that was Cuban Missile Crisis, that period. We had broken relations. We went down to visit the German German mayor, the mayor's office. And they said, well, let me tell you something. You got a little bit of a problem. I said, what's the problem? The problem is this, that the rule is that for a Cuban to marry, they have to get permission from the Cuban government. Now, the Cuban government, the Americans do not have any recognition with the Cuban government. You have to go through Czechoslovakia to get them to go to Cuba, and they'll come back and so on. I said, wait a minute. Are you kidding me? I said, we're 29 years old. We're well over the age of majority. I don't think any of that's necessary. Well, I slammed that desk so hard that everything went up and down. And he said, okay. We can work this out. Forget Germany, forget Cuba. You're old enough. Yes, we'll marry you. Now, when do you want to get married? I looked at Muncie. I said, what do you think? 2 weeks? 2 weeks. No, very full, very full. I said, okay, how about 1 week? No, very full, very full. I said, okay, now you tell me. Everything I guess didn't work. You tell me. And he said, how about 11 o'clock? It was 8 o'clock in the morning. I said, 11 o'clock today? Today. I looked at Muncie, you ready? We didn't have a ring. We had nothing. I said, okay, if it's gotta be today, let's do it. So we got married the same day. Both our mothers were there. We woke up our best man. He said, what'd you wake me up so? I said, all right, big deal, you're getting married. So that was it, we're married. What else? Then
the union.
yeah, okay, then let's see it. And 63, we started this union, and no one wanted to take over, take it, to be ahead of it. I said, okay, I'll do it. I don't know anything about it, but I'll do it. So became head of a teachers union. And at that point, the government, the President Kennedy signed an executive order establishing a formal labor relations program in the federal government. And we were the first union to get any kind of recognition in this. And the good news was that the military personnel system, which gave services to the school system, hated the director of the school, who was a scoundrel. He was an absolute scoundrel. So they said, we got a union, we'll get the union, and we'll support the union and have them control this guy, which is what I was doing. They did all my work for me. They actually wrote a contract. And I said, contract? What's a contract? So they did all that, and they got it started. And so this then went on until the present day. It's still this has happened in let's say in about the mid-60s, and it's still going on today at this point. That's it.
And you ended up in Vermont?
Then what happened was we were in Crete, and one Christmas, one of the teachers said, why don't we do something really neat? And like what? Let's take a cruise. So the whole faculty, plus a lot of the base personnel, signed up for a cruise that took us from Piraeus to Alexandria, Egypt, to Cyprus, to Beirut, and then to Crete, and then up the peninsula of Italy, up to Venice. And in Venice, we stayed for 3 days, and we had a school in Vicenza, Italy. And I knew people there from the union, so we went there, and it was, holy shit, marble, glass, brass, wood, The door closes completely. There's no inch break underneath the door. Electricity, water, all the things that we didn't have it when we first got to Crete. This is like walking into heaven. This is. So she said, "Why don't we ask for this on the way back?" So the transfer program started, and we asked for it. I was sent to Verona. I said, "Well, I wanted to go where it was a bigger installation," and I said, "Oh, I know what they did." I said, "They heard I was still active with the union. Get them a small staff, 8 people. He can only infect a few people. They don't bother anybody." They didn't know there were telephones and cars, and letters and stuff. So we got Verona, and that was another blessing. Have you been to Italy? Anybody been to Italy? Okay, so you have an idea. My office turned out to be in a 11th century Italian palace. I was 200 paces from the best preserved Roman arena in the world. And when I wanted a break, I went out to the main square and I had my Aperol spritz. So it was just, and I had people come in from Europe, from the States all the time. They want to visit us, of course.
Al Shanker.
Yeah, Al, I don't know if any of you knew about the AFT, Al Shanker. He and I were very good friends. And I said, "Al, whenever you need a trip, let me know. I'll set up a conference for you." So he loved Europe. He loved me. So we would do that. And he said to me, "Ernie, how about we trade? I have a view of the Capitol." I said, "That sounds pretty good. I have a view of the 12th century, a 2,000-year-old arena. Do you think that matches?" He's like, "I see. I get it." No." So that happened quite often. Anyway, then we continued that until 2002, and then I retired, came back here. And in the meantime, we had bought a place in Alexandria, and that's an interesting story. What happened was, an Italian friend of ours said, "If you ever decide to retire in the United States, I have a place for you to stay." And my wife says, "Ernie, an Italian telling you a place outside of Italy is a place you would go to? Listen carefully." So she says, "Yeah, it's where we live in Old Town Alexandria. It's a great place." I said, "Okay, Maria Pia, look into it for me." So she did. "Listen, I'm not doing this just because you're my friend. I have plenty. If you're serious, okay, we're serious." That's where we're living today, in this place. And as I tell everybody, I live in the best place in town. I said, "Well, where is that?" Next, across the street from Trader Joe's. Anyway, so that's it. So we're there. And then what happened there is, as a result of my daughter living in our place and being asked questions about how we do this problem and that problem, and calling me and I give her advice. And finally they said, "You're like 26 years old. How do you know all this stuff?" She said, "Well, I call up my dad." I said, "Who's your dad?" He says, "Well, he's a union organizer." Is he gonna come? Like, "Well, it's his place." I said, "Well, okay. Ask him if he'd be involved with us when he comes over here." So I said, well, I have a skill set that you could probably use a little bit. So I said, "Tell him yes." So before I arrived, I was a member of the board, elected a member of the board. They hadn't met me or seen me. I was a member of the executive board of the local civic association. And one of our jobs was to close down the last remaining coal-fired power plant in the area. And as my father-in-law, my Mexican father-in-law, told me and his daughter, he's married to my son, our son, "You don't close a power plant. You just that just doesn't happen. I love you. I love Ernie. He's a nice guy, but you just don't do it." He came back 2 years later and just, guess what? It's closed. But we found out later on from other friends that the counselor, the advisors on the management side were telling them the same thing, that the population, you can't continue. you're operating at 50%. Yeah, you're making some money, but nothing close to what if you're doing 100%, you can't do it because you're polluting too much. So get rid of it. That's the only answer you have. It's an old plan also, get rid of it. So that's what happened. So they're getting it from both sides. Now, that's very unusual for me, because on the union side, you know what the union wants, but you never know what management really wants unless you have an insider. At that point, we didn't have it. But later on, we found out, interestingly, both of us were asking for the same thing. So that's part of the rest of that.
Which takes us back to the embassy.
Oh, yeah. And so in my building, Bob Sunderford, a retired dermatologist, took a liking to me. He says, Ernie, you should get your citizenship. Oh, no, I told you that already.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he did that. And that was that. And everybody, we have citizens, countries from all over the place. What else do we have?
There's your final picture at the embassy.
Oh, yeah, this is when we had our passport, and you see, let me point out, can you see it at all?
Yeah.
This is my wife. This is my daughter. This is my son, our daughter. This is our daughter-in-law from Mexico. And Che is not in this. Our son-in-law.
But you're holding your mother's photograph.
Oh, yeah, I'm holding my mom. This is my mother's photograph. And this is yeah. Yeah, that's it. How are we doing? What's it?
Doing okay. We're at Ellis Island.
Huh?
Ellis Island.
Oh, yeah. Well, on my 80th birthday. Excuse me, on my 80th birthday, we decided to visit New York and see Ellis Island, get some family history. So we did that, and that's they used to have bricks, but the bricks were corroded from the salt water. So they put our names on aluminum plates, and that's I'm showing the kids. What fascinated me about Ellis Island was how close we were to the city, and to get the city's background, the New York City skyline, which is quite something for me, because I'm really a New Yorker. Anyway, what else? That's it? All right, let me go then. How much time we got?
Got about an hour unless there's questions
Oh, yeah.
or comments.
Yeah, you're not asking any questions. No questions. What's the matter with you? But you want to say something? No? No, okay.
Well, I'll ask a
Go ahead.
question. Your uncle's families do you?
Let's see. My uncles, I think we did the best of the families. My uncle, let's see, Arthur's family, and his son Peter, my first cousin, is quite successful. He was nominated, he was not nominated, he was awarded Scientist of the Year of California. He dealt with the hydrogen fuel cell. He's now working on grids, on microgrids, for let's say a tribe, Indian tribe has a casino, a hospital, and a resort area, and they had enough land that they could use a solar array to get enough power to power their whole operation and not rely on the Pacific, whatever it is, electric company. And he helped put that in. Then a city wanted to change into hydrogen fuel cell buses and affordable housing and a whole center renewal in his area. He's near Arcata, California. And he's done some fabulous work. Let's see, that's him.
So your other two uncles made it to the US.
What's that?
Your other two uncles made it to the US as well? You said Jules was in the US. Your other.
Yeah, they all. Arthur came also, and Siegfried went to Israel, and that's he started a family there, and he was too much of a daredevil. He was riding his Volkswagen the wrong way, and he got in the head on, and he died. Too many.
Which one went on the Hindenburg?
No, okay. The Hindenburg. The Zeppelin. Okay, my uncle, my granduncle, my grandmother's brother, Albert, very, very wealthy, very wealthy. lived in Berlin. He dealt in futures, grain, etc. futures, made a sack of money. And he realized very soon what the situation was. He would take the Zeppelins Hindenburg to Brazil. He'd fly from Berlin, this is in the 30s, early 30s, to Sao Paulo, Brazil, just in case they needed to. And of course, he realized that that's where his part of the family settled. We've since lost touch with them, but other parts of the family have touched in touch with them.
Okay,
So,
I have put Muncie's life up on the screen if you want to talk a little bit about
Okay.
that.
Oh, you got it there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Muncie, my wife has actually, in some respects, much more exciting than mine was. She was born in the Philippines, a Spanish family who went there to grow sugar and lived a life of pure luxury until the Japanese invaded in 41. And then anyone that was white or looked like white was in trouble. And so a lot of her family was killed, just tragically. Well, it's all tragic, it's just awful. Anyway, one of the things that she did, a movie was made of, is a trek from Baguio to, which was at this point, now it's changed, the climate has changed, but at that point, had pine forests in the Philippines. It was a tropical country, but it was so high up, it was 6,000 feet up, it was a pine forest and cool, and that's where the rich people live. But they had to go, they wanted to go down to Manila because the Americans had invaded and they were getting rid of the Japanese, and they wanted to go. There was a 150-mile trek in the mountains. And she missed getting killed by about this much when she stepped forward right behind a piece of shrapnel. Would have killed her. So she made it, they made it out, and then she was repatriated as a Cuban because her mother was born in Cuba by the American Red Cross, and went to Cuba, where she was hosted by Fifi Tarafa. Fifi Tarafa was part of the family, and she was rich. How rich was she? She had a fleet of ships. Pretty rich. She had a suite in the Waldorf Astoria that she owned. Anyway, so she hosted them. Once she then went back with her mother and her brother to Cuba, and then got citizenship, and then went to Spain because most of her family was in Spain. In Spain, they had just got over the Civil War. Franco won, and so on, and it was just. She said we were actually probably better off in the Philippines than with a war torn than going into Cuba, going into Spain. Well, she lived there, and she said, "This is not for me." Her brother had left and gone to Germany, and the German tourists were coming to Spain at the time. Spain cost nothing. And so they would come there, and the buses would leave empty going back. So he went back and he told Muncie, this is the place to come. So she went, started working with the Americans, learned how to type and be a secretary, hated Germany, hated the Germans. I said, you're marrying a German. And she said, I gotta get some sun. So she found out there was a big base in Libya, in North Africa, with lots of sun. We would have rain. This little white cloud would be way over there, would come over, turn a little dark, come over the base, and for about 5 minutes, drenching downpour, and then it would go away, it'd sun out, and you'd watch the water sucked in by the sand. And that was it. That was the rain. It was unbelievable. So she came there and she worked at the school. I came to the school and I said, oh, very nice. And so it became an item. And that was how that started. And then we got married in Germany, went to Crete, then back to Italy, And then I said to her, I said, we figured out every 2 or 3 years, we moved to another place. She said, you know what? I said, we have bases in Spain, families there, it'd be nice to go to. And she says, you know what? I said, what? She says, I think I'm close enough to Spain right here. I think I want to stay here. So 35 years later, we continued in Italy. People say, how long have you been living here? I said, why'd you pick Verona? I said, I couldn't find a better place to stay than this. And if those of you who've been to Italy can understand that. And if you haven't been, I urge you to go. Anywhere. It's fun. What else?
Well, you want to talk about Hemingway?
Oh. My wife has an ability to meet serious people. So she's on the base, she's working at the IG Farben building in Frankfurt. I don't know if you know much about it, but it was the biggest office building, I think, in Europe at one point. When the Americans realized they're gonna win, they said to everybody, especially the Air Force, do not bomb that building. That's gonna be our headquarters. Okay. So it's the kind of headquarters, I don't know if you've ever seen this in pictures where you step on the elevator and it keeps on going, and you step off at another floor. It doesn't stop. You just have to step on and off. Anyway, so she's there and she meets these 2 lieutenants and they say, we want to go to Spain and we want to see if we can see Hemingway because it's around July and the running of the bulls, San Fermin in Pamplona. We'd like you to come along with us. Speak Spanish. It's okay. Off she goes. Doesn't have a passport. She says, you're not going without a woman friend of hers, Czechoslovakia, says, take my passport, match it. This is in 58, 59. Just take my passport. Czechoslovakian woman, doesn't look like her, blonde hair. And she's, I couldn't even pronounce her name. So off she goes, but she doesn't do that. She hides in the back seat under the blankets and the things and passes through the borders and gets to Spain, gets to Pamplona, finds out that Hemingway is at the bull ring right then, gets tickets up in the nosebleed section, and with her 2 lieutenant friends with the binoculars and the cameras and stuff. And then they look and say, Hemingway's over there. He's over there. Let's go see him. Walks her way down while a bullfight is going on. That's like asking to be lynched. It's just disturbing people. Finally gets at the bottom and they say, where are you going? So we want to go see Hemingway. Says, you can't. You have a permission from the governor. Says, no. In the meantime, a bull was killed. Every attention goes everywhere else, and they slip by. They get into the bull ring, and at the gate where they exit with a dead bull, they was pulled by 4 horses, and she's standing right against the wall, and it's about an inch or 2 between her and the horses. And everyone's saying, that woman, look, that woman. And they left, and then she continues across the arena up to where Hemingway's located. And she confronts them because she meets him, and he looks at her. He says, what is wrong with you? She says, what do you mean? She says, you could have got killed. She says, well, why? He says, I wanted to meet you. He says, oh, okay. But that was crazy. And so she says, yes, but I just saw an old man in the sea, and I just, okay. And she puts her ticket to be signed by him, and another woman puts a piece of paper on top of her, and anyway, just loses it. You couldn't wait, could you? Takes it, crumbles it, throws it down, and signs it. He says, meet me at El Chopo tonight. I'll be there from 5 to 7. You're my guest. And she says, oh, Mr. Hemingway, I'd love to go, but I can't. I have to go visit my mother. We had a guest at our house the other day. She says, This is the woman that turned Hemingway down on a date. Can you imagine that? Turned Hemingway down on a date. And we have a big picture of the house that one of our painter friends did of Hemingway. I was remarking that this incident. That's one of many things with her. What are some of the others?
There's the painting.
Huh? Oh, that's it. Yeah, that's the picture. And one of the interesting things the artist told us is when you paint a picture like that, you always paint the protagonist looking straight out. Because with that, when you stand anytime, anywhere else, it looks like he's looking at you. That's the effect you get. So interesting. Yeah. Thank you, Mel. Good for you. What's the other one? The other good one. Well, we're living in the Verona. They have the arena, and in the arena they have opera every summer. They have one of the biggest opera seasons in the world is located in Verona. This particular time, Carmen was being played, and the Don Jose is Jose Carreras. Jose, I don't know how many opera fans we have here. Jose Carreras is one of the lead tenors of Spain, and he's a Catalan, and he's invited to a sculptor's house for a reception, to which Muncie's also very friendly with. And yeah, Miguel Barracle, I don't know, he's pretty much world class. Anyway, and so they meet each other, and they're both speaking Catalan, and her name is Montserrat, and his mentor was Montserrat Caballé. So right away we have that relationship. And they hit it off, and they've met a number of times in different parts of Europe. Rendezvous. That's again my wife with all of her little connections here. That's Muncie. Anyway, I think that's what else? That's about it.
Well, there are lots of little stories.
Oh yeah.
Depends on what you want to talk about. If there's an interest. You told me a couple of stories from your time with the Harlem Hellfighters, like the clipboard.
Oh, in the military meeting. Oh yeah. Turns out that when you're in the military, a couple of things. You're in the military and you're low rank. If you get a clipboard, and you walk around with a clipboard, and they ask you, what are you doing? It's I can't tell you. Opens up all kinds of doors. I'm here to inspect. With whom? I can't tell you. It's none of your business. Kind of out of all kinds of. Oh, I'll tell you one of the other stories. I was the head of the squad. And they asked me when I signed up, they said, do you have any experiences? Yeah, I was an ROTC, which I wasn't. I went to Hunter College, where it was a women's school, and they had no ROTC, but they didn't know anything about it. I said, yeah, 2 years, okay, you're gonna be a corporal, you're gonna be in charge of the squad. So I told my squad, look, I'm gonna give you some advice. If you follow it, it'll be a lot easier. If you don't follow it, you'll see what happens. When we finish our normal duties, either you go to the library, you go to mess hall, you go somewhere else. Don't stay in the barracks, because if you're in the barracks and they say, Lehman, I need 5 guys to go do this, I'm gonna take you. But if you're not there, I can't take you, can I? So that's what happened. But one time they caught me and they said, we got this bathroom that needs to be painted. Okay, so I tell her, take the guys, let's go with this, buckets of paint, gray paint. We look at the bus, and you know what, I have an idea that we could probably do this a lot quicker. And if we do it quicker, we just hang out here. Just, just sit down and have a good time. So what's the idea? Well, instead of just doing like this, take about a half or third of a bucket and just throw it up against and so we did it. Shit, we didn't know how fast paint ran. It was all on the floor. We're painting. It was unbelievable. So, but we still have a fair amount of time off. That was my time in the military.
Of your time in Harlem as a teacher, too.
Yeah, oh yeah, some good stories with that. Let me see the ones I like.
Motorcycle or the ferry
Yeah,
boat?
yeah, no, I taught. When I taught in junior high school in the upper level of Harlem at 163rd Street in Amsterdam. And at that point, I had a motorcycle. And for the many, after about 3 or 4 months, I stopped having diarrhea, and I could deal with a class, and we came to accommodations. They had their own language. They spoke English, but I didn't understand it. And finally, I got to be friendly with a couple of them, and they were translated for me, so I knew what they're talking about. And I asked them, what's the big thing you want to do? What is it? He says, we want to go to Coney Island. So you want to go to Coney Island? I said, Coney Island's 2 hours by subway. Yeah, I don't care. We want to go to Coney Island. I said, we're not gonna go to Coney Island. There's an amusement park in Hudson, across the Hudson, that we can go to in about 20 minutes. I'll get some cars, we'll go there. Okay, let's do that. Saturday, we'll meet you here at school. So Saturday came with 3 or 4 guys with cars. About 5 people showed up. And I said to them, I don't understand this. Everybody's excited about going to this, and only 5 people. What happened? Something happened. And they say, yeah, Mr. Lehmann, I'll tell you what happened. Well, what happened? You know how many times teachers have promised us to do this and didn't show up? I said, that's terrible. I said, let me tell you something. If I tell you we're going to do something, if I die, or if I'm injured, or if I'm sick, I won't be there. Otherwise, you can guarantee that I'll be there. So we took trips. Unbelievable. Went to UN, and I was told by the guides that was the best behaved class they've ever had. I said, Sunday best, Sunday best. They all had Sunday best for the church, Sunday best. They were fabulous. Then I said, okay, what about around the boat that goes around Manhattan? Yeah, that sounds like fun. So he did that. And I said, now look, Americans have a reputation of just dropping junk all over the place, not using receptacles. We're going to be different. If we have something to throw out, there's a trash can there, there's a trash there. And this is our area, we're going to keep it clean. Okay? Okay. We arrived, had a nice trip, we arrived, and they got up and looked around. There was this one like rectangle, nothing on the floor, absolutely clear. Well, every place else was littered. And they said, look at us, look how sloppy those people are over there. Look how good we were. Yeah, a couple of things like that. Anyway, the class was 7-11. Now 7-1, 2, and 3 were the brightest. 7-17, 16, 15 were the slowest. I was 7-11, so I was below it. So-called below average, which I wasn't. And I said to them, they give this behavior award. There's no reason we can't do that. He says, you don't have to. I know 7-1 gets it all of 7-2 or 3, but you don't have to be smart to behave. Just behave. Yeah, but Johnny does this and Billy does this, and it's all the guys do this. I says, well, you have to convince him not to do that. Convince? And we talked how you convince people. And within about, and I said, if we do it, we'll do something special. And they knew we could do it because I had done before. We'd done trips and things. I was good for my word. They trusted me. We would win the behavior award. Never in the history of that school had 7-11 ever won the behavior award. It was really great. We had a good time. And I said, look, if you don't want to ride on the motorcycle, you must behave. Oh, okay,
So they got to ride on your cycle?
yeah,
Oh.
yeah. Ride on the motorcycle. And I would visit them. They actually lived in Harlem further south. And I would say, I'm gonna go down and visit you this afternoon. I'll see you what time, six, where are you going to locate it? So I go down, spend some time. Went into the drugstore and looked at the books on the rack. No books, just a few little handbook paperbacks on the racks. Really a depressed area. And to a great degree, the school was one of the highlights of their life. It's very sad, very, very sad. Anyway, I think that's,
Sounds like it.
yeah, sounds like it's like a pretty good deal. No questions? Don't tell me I answered your question. Oh, good, yes.
You get back to Germany.
I used to, listen, oh, that's another good story. When I was a representative in Europe, the best way to travel within Central Europe is by train. And by train, the best way to go by train was a Euro pass. You could buy a Euro pass for 3 months. The union bought me 3 Euro passes for a year. So I had 9 months, show my pass, get on the train. And in Italy, a journalist is the highest prestigious position. Doctor, lawyer, journalist. Now, as a union rep, I was constantly writing the briefs and, flyers, letters and stuff like that. So they saw me writing all the time. And I'd be the same crew. I was on this, there's a great train. It left Verona at 8 o'clock in the morning, got into Munich at 3 or 2. And then from Munich, I went out to where I had to go. So I was on that train tens of times. I would say in 1 year, probably 30, 40 times I was on that train. I met people there. So I was in Germany all the time. Germany was where most of the schools were located. So I had to be up there. And that was fortunately, I love trains. And I'll give you a good example. I was on the train and we pulled into Bolzano and the waiter, I was in the dining car and the waiter says, we're having a strike. A strike? I got a train I gotta meet in Munich. He says, don't worry, it's a hiccup strike. It's only one hour. I said, you mean, if I gotta get off this train and go downtown, because all the train stations are in Center City in Europe. Go downtown, have a coffee and sit down and enjoy the view and come back in 55 minutes. You'll still be here. We'll be here. I leave all my stuff on I'll find it here. We'll take care of it. Had my coffee, walked around, looked at a couple of shops, back on the train. I said, see, here we are. Let's go. And there's another one I love. I get writer's block. So how do I break my writer's block? I get on a train. And for some reason it goes away and I can start writing. So my mother's visiting. And look, I got this brief I have to write. Come with me, we'll go up to Murano and I'll do the work. So we're going up to Murano, went up there, had nice lunch and stuff, came back. And the conductor says, you have a ticket. This lady does not have a ticket. So I said, okay, no. I don't want your money now because I have to charge you a fine. And I don't want you to pay a fine. So what do I do? He says, well, this is all I'm going to say. Next stop, you get off and go to the ticket booth and buy a ticket for this lady. And we'll wait. And then you get back on it and everything's okay. Then you have to pay the fine. And I'm telling your mother this good New York Jew. Are you kidding me? He's gonna pull off and I'll be stuck here on a train and you'll be down there. Get out of here. That's not gonna happen. Like he said he would. It's okay. So I go, and I'm not the first in line. I'm like the third in line. And the conductor's standing out of the train. And I'm turning around. He's it's okay. Italians, you can talk, just use your hands. No problem at all. I get my ticket, come back. He says, okay, now we go. That's why I love one of those reasons. I love Italy and I love the train. Anyway, anything else?
Well, that's fine.
Okay. Somebody else?
I had a
Yeah.
question.
Sure.
Your mother worked for the underground? Your mother worked for the underground?
Yeah, actually, she was, no, let me get better. She was a communist.
Yeah,
And my father was a communist too. Now, how do I know for sure she was a communist? What's my first name? Ernest. Know who Ernest was in that period? Ernst Thälmann was the president of the German Communist Party. That's my first name. My second name, my middle name is Joseph, Josef. Who was Joseph in the 30s? Come on, you know.
so,
There you go. So that gives you an idea. One of the ways you can judge a person's political leaning is how they name their children. So that gives you a good idea. Anything else? Anyone else?
Wasn't there a story way back at the beginning, Mel, that you skipped over and you said we'll get to that later?
we didn't really follow them, man.
Well, I don't remember, I was going towards the beginning and
Yeah,
he skipped over something. He's, oh,
well, Crystal Knock was, you just.
Oh, yeah, I didn't say about Crystal, no. I was, they came into our house. I was 4 years old. And they made us line up against the stables. And they went into the house to wreck it. And fortunately, my grandmother had the presence of mind to cut the master switch, so there's no power. So they did some damage. And then they left. And it's always the way they arranged it was not hoodlums from the city, it was or the town, it was from the one next far away. So there was no knowledge. And so what happened then? Huh?
Snuck off to the trains.
And then we left, they said, you have to leave your house, you're out, get out of your house. And so we went to the train station and waited there on the first train that was leaving for Frankfurt. Then we went to Frankfurt where my mother was living with my father.
whatever happened to your father? I mean, where does he fit in?
Well, what happened was my father was a biological father. He wasn't social. He didn't have the only way my mother kept in touch with him is through his sister. So that's a sad part of my background. Though psychologically I had a way of I'll tell you about that, of coping with that. There are men that I would admire and I would designate in my mind that he's my father. And occasionally that person disappointed me that he was no longer my father. I picked somebody else. And that's how up until very recently, that's basically what back there was what I was doing.
And your
Now-
father was not a Jew.
No, he wasn't Jewish. No, and what's nice now about what happened to me now is both my kids say what a great father I am. He's back. Anything else?
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you for putting up with all this. Thank you.
You didn't tell us your Mel stories, but I don't think she really wants to.
Well, I think Mel should tell us her most story.
Let me just tell one. Yeah, we used to litigate a lot in the union. And oh, no, I gotta tell two. I gotta tell two. We gotta litigate a lot and the management had some respect for me, but for Mel, whoa. And we had a case and I said, by the way, Mel will be litigating. Mel's gonna litigate it? Are you sure? I said, I'm positive. I got too much to do. So she said, okay, let's settle. Now, the other one is, we negotiate, this current contract is still in effect. 5,000 different sheets of paper over a 5-year period. And I think 70 some bargaining sessions. you could say Article 3, Section 5, 4-4-3. We're missing that. Can you get that for me? You want this? Yes, we can't have it. I will go make a photocopy and I'll bring it back, then it'll go, the original will go where it belongs, because otherwise I will never get it back again. You know, and finally, management said to us, we have a favor to ask. I said, what is that? I said, we have not kept any records, you know. Would you mind if we used your records, if we have any discussion about what this means and so on? And Mel was taking the minutes. And I said, Mel, she says, it's up to you. She say, that means that we control the history of the whole negotiations, basically. And I said, yeah, that's it. So that's how the kind of esteem that we had with Mel. Yeah. Yes, ma'am, we do.
I'm not taking minutes today.
Will you be teaching
Okay.
any more classes in the fall?
Perhaps I have some health things I have to get through, but I'm looking forward to doing some, yes. Yeah, I have one on Caravaggio that I'm thinking about completing, one on Whistler and his Peacock Room. Yeah, and then I'm doing a reprise eventually of Bill Malden, World War II. He was the cartoonist of Willie and Joe. Yeah, so I did that about 5 or 6 years ago, I think, before Zoom.
Yeah, pre-pandemic, the whole thing is pre-pandemic and past. Yeah.
Lots on the horizon. And I was very happy to have an opportunity to have Ernie visiting me. So I said to him, you know, we don't have that many in-person classes. And if you're going to be here, would you be willing to share some of your personal history? And although the Holocaust part was only his first few years of life, the impact for the whole Lehmann family that spread, as you heard, internationally and in generationally, gives you a feel for the dispersion of the Jewish people brought about by the persecution that occurred during that period. Yeah. But resilient as well.
Yes.
And I have great respect for this guy. He good union leader, for which I respect him, but an excellent, as you just experienced, teacher. With lots of good memories. So I'm glad you all had a chance to meet him and share a few minutes with us. And if any of you want to hang a little longer, feel free.
Yeah, if you want to stay.
But we're officially
chat a
finished.
little.
Yeah.